which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Greetings from the Philippines to the world. We are on Facebook Live on Eagle News and Net25 TV and also on our streaming site, eaglenewslive.com. Watch us on our YouTube channel at Net25 TV. I am Cesar Vallejos. Welcome to Open for Business. Join me discover the latest news and information in business around the world. Stay ahead of the curve from vision to action. The Filipino is a resilient race. We have weathered unimaginable calamities. But as a nation, we always rise and face new challenges, including the COVID-19 crisis. This week, we will talk about ways to minimize the risks posed to our lives and livelihood during disasters. Ms. Maria Teresa Nina, abogado, Senior Manager for Programs and Partnerships of Oxfam Philippines, will share disaster preparedness and where to get access to financial resources and the ability to predict the onset of major and disruptive events in this week's episode of Open for Business.
Sa panahon na laganap ang mga sakit, katuwang nyo ang BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Gawa sa state-of-the-art facilities ang BMEG Premium Feeds. Kaya ito ay safe, sanitized, and hygienic. Walang dalang sakit, certified, malinis, sariwa at sigurado. At para laging malinis ang paligid, gumamit ng Protect Plus Gold. Isang safe broad-spectrum disinfectant na pumapatay ng mga virus, bacteria at fungi. BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
Nakita ko ang paghahandang ginawa nyo para dito sa Tagisan ng Galing. Grabe ka, parang nakita ko si Viance.
Ang lakas lakas ng dating mo. Siguro not only sa audience, pero sa aming mga judges, iba yung impact mo no?
A new batch of talents ang makakasama natin na magpapamalas ng kanilang natatanging galing sa sayawan. This is Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Dance Edition!
Open for Business is back, and with me is Ms. Maria Teresa Nina, abogado, Senior Manager for Programs and Partnerships of Oxfam Philippines. How are you, Ms. Nina?
I'm very good, thank you. I trust that all is also well from your end.
Yes. We will be talking about resilience, disaster readiness this afternoon. And this is always experienced by us Filipinos because we actually experience a lot of calamities and disasters. If you can give us an overview of the readiness of the Philippines and communities on resiliency, adaptivity, and disaster readiness, Ms. Nina.
Yes, good afternoon. I think it's important to recognize to begin with that on the average, we have 24 typhoons in a year. And this alone indicates of how we should prepare. Good thing is that within the Philippines, we have the Republic Act 10121, which actually guides all our national government and our local government to prepare for disaster. And the disaster that only cover climate weather hazards such as typhoon, but also flood, volcanic eruption, and drought, and so much more. Within Oxfam, we actually support and work with local governments, particularly civil society organization, financial institutions, businesses, and the community themselves to actually increase the preparedness. Within the Philippines, one of the things that we advocate to actually increase the preparedness of communities is to work with stakeholders, local agencies to provide access to disaster risk finance or the aid that we need so community members have choice of the types of preparedness that they need based on their context.
I'll make a follow-up question on that financial preparedness. You mentioned about 24 typhoons, that cross that we experience, that the Philippines is experience every year. Dito ba, Ms. Nina, was there a study already on, is this increasing every year because of the of climate change, and lalo na ngayon also with the many you mentioned also about this disasters like the eruptions. Has there been a significant change of these figures, because of what's happening with the climate globally? Or is there something very special here in the Philippines that we are experiencing all this, and what's the trend in terms of the disasters that we are experiencing every year, Ms. Nina?
Actually, according to the study of Pag-asa, few years back we have an average of 21 typhoon. Now it increased to 24, and five of these typhoon are actually destructive. So out of 24, you have 5 in a year that we should really be prepared. And further, according to the trends that Pag-asa is covering on from their previous studies, about 90% of typhoon, which are usually destructive, actually occurs or happened during last quarter of the year. Some of them are pushing back to the first quarter. Kaya katulad ngayon, di ba, meron na tayo agad bagyo. But I think that's very important to note na dumadami talaga, more frequent yung extreme weather events katulad ng mga destructive typhoons.
In these calamities, in these disasters, Ms. Nina, although the Filipinos are considered as very resilient race, di po ba? And here you are, an NGO that's really focusing on how you can help people, small businesses. What is the vision of your organization, and what's the driving force of your organization in focusing on this disaster preparedness strategies? And typhoon lang po ang nababanggit natin, although you mentioned about other calamities. Pero in your organization ba, is there a system also that somehow is preparing various modules or approaches in dealing the various disasters that we experience every year?
That's right. Well, one of the projects that Oxfam is implementing in the Philippines, and this is an innovative program called Be Ready. So Be Ready stands for Building Resilient, Adaptive, and Ready Communities. According to our studies, there should be a significant change how we should prepare. Even if we have a culture of preparedness, the nature and the frequency of extreme weather events are becoming more pronounced, more frequent because of the impact of climate change. And it hit hardest vulnerable and low-income communities. So with that, we need to increase our adaptive capacity and prepare more. In 2018, the European Union have shared a study that if we invest €1 for every preparedness, we can actually save €4 to €7. So meaning, if our thinking is building towards preparing our communities better to increase their resiliency, to avoid loss of lives, infrastructure, and even livelihood, we could use certain amount, significant funds for being more prepared than saving lives or reconstructing whatever was damaged by the typhoon. And under this framework, our program actually focuses on two innovations. One is to ensure that people, especially disaster-prone and vulnerable communities, have access to parametric weather information. They understand the potential risk and impact of a particular hazard. Kasi this project is actually implemented in Salcedo, Eastern Samar, and we look at the top hazard in the country. According to Pag-asa, that is typhoon, second is flood, and then of course, if you are living in low-lying area that is along the shore or coast, storm surge actually comes next. So understanding these hazards, understanding that there's a more frequent extreme weather events, and at the same time, understanding that our current program as a country in terms of disaster preparedness is also focused on the actual response. So kailangan meron tayong adaptation na gagawin. And with our program, we've integrated working with the local government to use parametric information and to link up with digital financial service provider so that the vision that even before, in this case typhoon, 3 days before the typhoon landfalls, people already have the preparation, the cash grant or monetary aid that they need to be prepared. So usually based on our experience, few days before the landfall of Typhoon Auring, we have disbursed cash grant to support the communities. Some of them went to the evacuation center, purchase food, medicine, strengthen their houses. So ito yung interventions that we have integrated alongside with a lot of community trainings on disaster risk preparation, evacuation, safeguarding, and protection.
Ms. Nina, you mentioned a term which you called parametric information. Can you expound further on what is parametric information?
So we're actually using now in our forecasting, risk forecasting methodology, a combination of data on forecast information, so weather variables yan, based on historical records of a particular hazard or disaster, and also the social vulnerabilities of community. We combine those information and come up with risk modeling technology that is developed with the local communities. In our forecasting information right now, we use satellite information, we predict the patterns, and tell signal warnings, diba, of level of strength, particularly of a typhoon. With a parametric index, we incorporate forecast, weather forecast. We consider vulnerabilities, exposure of a particular geography or community, and also forecast possible impact. No? Kung tatamang signal number 1, ganito kalakas, ilang percent ng population ang tatamaan, and therefore, it also helps the community to prepare necessarily kung ano yung kailangan nilang gawin. Mag-evacuate ba sila? Bibili lang ba sila ng pagkain? Maghahanda ba sila ng ilang life-saving device? So, it helps the community and local government to understand better how to prepare.
But Ms. Nina, how is it different from the other information that are already provided by the government, like diba, we have the risk reduction agency, or the we also have Pag-asa for providing us forecasts. But how do you complement with these agencies, and what is the unique information that you are providing to these communities, Ms. Nina?
Actually, we work with the government, we work with the local agency, particularly in our pilot program, the Municipal Disaster Risk Management Council, likewise with the NDRIMC or National Disaster Risk Council. We also work closely with Pag-asa. We utilize the information provided by Pag-asa and also incorporate that in the risk modeling forecast system. The difference here with the parametric index, as I shared a while ago, people actually contributes to building up the data. When it was designed, para ka nag-crowdsourcing. Tinanong mo sila ano yung historical event, ano yung impact sa kanila, and that is actually included in the model. So you do not only tell the forecast of the weather or the strength of the typhoon. It gives you an indicative impact of how many would be affected, the potential strength, and therefore, local communities, particularly the local government, could prepare accordingly. Kasi magkaibang alam mo lang, may darating na bagyo, kaysa sa alam mo, pag ito pala tumama, ganito kalakas signal number 2 kasi nasa coastal kami, mas maraming low-lying area along the Pacific coast kami, you can actually prepare better. And we use this information to signal, to release cash grants that would be needed by people to prepare. And that is where we work closely with businesses and local merchants so that they will also be ready with the upcoming typhoon.
This is especially interesting, Ms. Nina, to the viewers of Open for Business because a lot of SMEs, MSMEs are affected by all these disasters, typhoons, and lalo na nasa pandemic tayo with the pandemic and with all the other disasters that are happening. It is we really have to provide this information to small businesses and the entire communities. Pero it's very interesting yung sinabi mo na okay, we know the pattern, we know this information, it's recurring. And we have historical data. Pero what I am appreciating in this conversation, ma'am, is ano ang mga ginagawa ninyo to ensure that, like say for example, you mentioned about adaptive community. So knowing that there are innovations, that you do to prepare communities for disasters and enhance their resilience. What strategies are you recommending to ensure that these innovations or these changes are indeed adaptive and resilient for climate change? Example, diba? Parang, are you somehow offering new innovations or technology in terms of the structure of their businesses, or like say for example in evacuation centers, is there a specific design that you are helping build? And of course, you mentioned also about provision of cash transfer programs, and we know that, di ba, pag typhoon, kailangan talaga natin ng teknolohiya. Kumbaga parang if we lose our livelihood and technology is not there, we see a lot of families, the entire community at a loss because of the lack of communication and lack of cash during these times.
Actually, that's all very true. And in fact, that is why there is such a program such as Be Ready that would like to really support disaster-prone and vulnerable communities to strengthen their preparedness and adaptive capacity. And we look at it in different approaches or angle. One is, of course, the local government being the duty bearer needs to use information frequently and adjust the disaster risk contingency plan that would adapt to the current context sa hazard ng kanilang community. Pangalawa, the value and the critical role of the businesses, particularly the cash and market. And in our approach, we conduct mapping, understanding of the community cash flow, infrastructure, the types of supplies in the community. So we could help the small micro businesses to develop their own business continuity plan. And that is linked up to the government's disaster risk contingency plan. So that when the government prepares, the merchants, the market is also ready. Kasi imagine, ngayon we actually, if we provide assistance in the community after the disaster, then pa lang sila magkakaroon ng mga recovery program. But what we wanted in the project is that 3 days or weeks before, nagre-ready na yung lahat. So, the local government, we say, if we release cash grant, ang mga maliliit na sari-sari store o ang mga small enterprises in the community can have enough food that would last for example, 1 week that they need because people would be staying in evacuation center. So food, medicine, yung mga essentials natin for preparation. Likewise, be ready with your communications. No, may load ka ba, etc. So we see really the important role of the private sector, the small businesses to be ready with the government. Alongside is really yung use of parametric information, early warning system. No, early warning system is actually strengthened. So if this reaches everyone in the community, they can act on it their own, no, because they understand the need for preparedness. And lastly, yung pag-i-ensure na yung mga infrastructure ng financial businesses would be ready. Kasi for our project, we also focus in understanding and helping the financial sector what type of financial services should be available before a disaster. So in our recent, last week actually, we have launched the study on disaster risk financing and developing sustainable programs where financial sectors such as banks, cooperatives, digital financial technology, and the government would know what are the needed elements for a sustainable disaster risk financing framework.
Ma'am, very interesting when you mentioned about this disaster risk financial management. And it is true that this specific program would really benefit MSMEs and the community as a whole. How do you operationalize this? Is this just a mindset, or is there a specific structure in the community that you do, or is this some sort of an existing paradigm, or a setup that is built by, as you mentioned, both the local government units, your organization, and the members of the community?
All of them are actually should be present. One, it is a paradigm shift, as I mentioned. We focus our investment, our capacity before a disaster strikes. So meaning, dapat your policy, your systems, your plan should be ready in an event, a weather event or a typhoon or any calamity would strike. Pangalawa, it's actually encouraging all stakeholders to work together. Talagang, if we understand a hazard, tingnan nga natin yung readiness, preparedness natin. Organizationally, are we equipped? Do we have the funds? Do we have the training? And do we have the infrastructure? Kasi yun yung elements for us to ensure that we are ready. On the financing side, of course, it takes a lot of financial institutions to have an uptake and understanding of developing a particular product, such as the one that we are advocating and promoting, our availability of pre-disaster loan, preemptive insurance, where you get your payout before a disaster hits, not when after you are already impacted by a disaster. Or the value of savings, because saving an income would help you to prepare, strengthen your house, stockpile your food, evacuate, etc. And largely, the value of insurance as a risk transfer measure or protection. So if you have your asset in the coastal community, your asset would be, for example, bangka, fishing gear, o kung magsasaka ko, yung mga inputs mo. So you need to actually ensure this. So kapag ka sila ay naapektuhan, nasira, you can recover quickly kasi you don't absorb all the shocks and the stresses by yourself. And this is an important element that we are jointly developing with the financial sector, so it will become available. Although we have already some examples in our program area where an insurance is actually was used by a fisher folk na nasira yung kanyang bangka, na-recover niya uli kasi na-insure siya, which is actually dati hindi natin iniisip. Nisip lang natin, lilikas tayo o maghintay tayo ng papa-evacuate tayo. So it is asking and encouraging all the stakeholders to work together, use information, forecast information, gamitin mo to sa planning, mag-develop ka ng continuity plan, mag-in-place ka ng mga systems mo, ang transportation, naka-ready na, ang pagkain, nakahanda ng evacuation center, ihanda mo na, at continuous disaster risk training and financial literacy training, lalo na sa financial, so you would understand how to use different types of financial products. So all of these are actually should work together collaboratively with the government so you can sustain the effort.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So this is very concrete. As a matter of fact, these are very ideal steps, especially for us Filipinos who experience these regular natural calamities. Now, Ms. Nina, how do you select communities? I know that in the earlier conversation you said you have this criteria in choosing communities or the top hazards and the areas that are affected. Assuming I am an LGU, I wanted to have that kind of system in my LGU to ensure also that my community is ready for disasters. How do we, in terms of organization, in terms of operation, how do you choose or adopt communities and help them with this strategy?
One is that, of course, we look at the types of risk and hazard. Of course, we based our selection criteria on the data that is available. Who are the most vulnerable areas and community based on climate hazards? So, bagyo, baha, or even drought for some areas. But particularly right now, kasi ang pinaka-top in terms of hazard is typhoon. So we do engage with communities, vulnerable communities that are largely affected by typhoon. Pangalawa, we look at the social vulnerability. Sino yung low income, economically less in terms of income ng kanilang local government. So to help them better increase their capacity, because we would like also to link them with financial institutions to strengthen their programs on disaster risk financing. Ikatlo, very important is the receptiveness of the local government. Kasi even if you understand the hazard, even if you link with the financial sector or businesses, if the local government would not, of course, be encouraged to participate, then it would also be difficult. So we work with local governments that have also uptake or appetite to improve their systems, their disaster preparedness. So these are three important elements and criteria for us to start working with a particular area: top indicators of hazards, social vulnerability, and receptiveness to participate in disaster-ready program.
Yeah, Ms. Nina, in terms of the coverage, of the program or of this project, what is your plan in terms of target areas and participants? Has this been, piloted in specific areas lang, or your plan is really to roll this out, in the whole Philippines? Because, di ba, katulad lang dyan sa nangyari na naman sa Taal, medyo nagpanic na naman nung mga ilang linggo because of while we're already the economy has opened up and consumer confidence is growing and people are going back to malls and all these dining areas. Pero here comes another somehow disturbance. So dito ba in this case because of the information that you are providing, Ms. Nina, we see that of with the three criteria that you have mentioned, there, even if you have identified target areas, there may be some areas that you focus on because diba not all areas naman in the Philippines experience the same impact of climate change. So what is the system of plotting or scoping these strategies in the selection of the areas that you would want to focus on?
So when we started the pilot program in 2019, there's actually a request to support other communities. In fact, in one of our conversation with the Department of Interior and Local Government, maybe we can do this in other priority areas of the government as well. And we are actually looking at that direction for expanding or scaling up the program, working with national government, of course, guided by the national government. But of course, we would also be very purposive and strategic. We would look into areas that are largely needing the support. Priorities would include areas that are affected by multiple risks, typhoon, flood, drought, yung mga complex situation, and strengthen the capacity of the local government and other stakeholders, businesses in the area as we expand. So there are a number of areas that we would like to prioritize from the side of Oxfam, from the Pacific Coast, but of course from the government is to select other areas that would represent multi-risk nga na nabanggit ko kanina, bagyo, baha, at saka tagtuyot. No? So in the process, maybe that would be discussed later on, but definitely sharing the technology, sharing the practices, good practices that we have experienced under the Be Ready project is one of the commitment we have with the local government and even with private sector and financial institutions. So they could benefit in developing a viable business model that would become more sustainable and more relevant in the changing climate of not only of the Philippines but the entire world. And we cannot wait for another disaster to happen. Waiting is not an option anymore. We have to be proactive. So in that case, then we weigh our options on the priorities of the national government and the resources that we have. Kasi we are also an organization that is also supported by aid agencies. So we would like to ensure that we are also accountable in the funds that they give us and focus on most vulnerable communities.
Speaking of resources, Ms. Nina, the way you describe it would really need a lot of resources, both monetary and of course the participation of the different stakeholders. Where are the resources coming from? And I'm sure with the investments, one of the investments would be on the technology side because of the many information that you have to gather in participation with the other concerned agencies of government. Where are the funds coming from? And in terms of using technology in these projects, in what types of technologies are you using your resources to ensure that there will be very, very concrete outputs of the project?
So under the Be Ready project, we're actually implementing it with a consortium of partners. So under Be Ready project, Oxfam as the lead, we work closely with Plan International, also an international non-government organization focused on safeguarding and child protection. We also work with scientific organization who help us develop the forecasting technology. We work with Global Parametrics, a London-based technology and forecasting agency, which also shared resources, both experience, expertise, in terms of developing the model. And we also work with local financial technology partners. Paymaya Philippines is also one of our partners, along with their thousands of micro enterprises and agents, cash agents, and we all pitch in together. And even in insurance, no, from the financial sector, we all pitch in our resources to ensure that there is a viable and sustainable access to a risk financing program and forecast information. And the local government of Salcedo, for that matter, leads in terms of the monitoring, early warning system, and evacuation. So to address complex programs and to ensure disaster preparedness would really be a culture for us, no? Integrated as part of our day-to-day living. You really need a lot of stakeholders to work with. So Oxfam is one agency that is implementing the project. But likewise, in the community itself, in preparedness, that those are stakeholders that we all need to ensure that, you know, access to pre-disaster cash would be working, the market, the vendor, the local government, scientific organizations all pitch in, because we all have a role to play in increasing disaster resiliency.
Wow, you know, that's great to hear, Ms. Nina. Now, assuming in terms of choosing the recipients, or like say, for example, if an SME or a regular member of the community, maybe a household, how can one, or how, let's say, if I am a business owner or a member of my community who would want to avail of this disaster risk financing or insurance, how would I apply, and how would I be able to get also the resources that can be provided by this project?
So we have actually, under the Be Ready project, we have two types of project participants. One are the individual household, and we practice inclusive programming, because we're talking about community resilience. So dapat walang naiiwan. So dapat lahat, no, within the community is participating. But of course, in terms of assessing how much goes to what, that's largely dependent on your income class. So and that is being discussed with the local government. The second type of participant that we have in the project are the micro and small enterprises or merchant. And normally they're approached by the project because in our model, the micro and small enterprises are the mini banks in the community, in the barangay. So doon bumibili ng pagkain. They're your all-in-one services. Bumibili ng pagkain, nagdedeposito ng pera, kumukuha ng pera. So we really we approach them to participate in the project. We provide them with training, and we help them. We link them up with the local government to ensure that they are registered, and they're also a legal entity in the community. Especially, they would be disbursing aids or grant, no, for the program. So their approach, and we encourage as many as we can, provided that they're willing to participate in the project.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ms. Nina, you mentioned about this the importance of participation of the MSMEs as well, because of course, as you mentioned, they're the mini banks in the area, and My question there, Ms. Nina, is how will what will be the benefit also for the MSMEs availing of this project or being part, of this program? Of course, you mentioned this expands. This is a way for you to expand their access and gain their market base, kasi 'di ba sabi nga natin dito sa Pilipinas, isa rin sa mga problema natin ang financial inclusion, 'di ba? Wala yung iba they don't have bank accounts yet, some don't even go to online to pay, but because of the pandemic, diba, Miss Nina, we're seeing a lot of people going into this online and digital or e-payments. So what's the benefit for MSMEs participating in your programs?
Napakalaki, no? Last year, I remember before the pandemic, or the extreme lockdown started, ito rin yung dinidiscuss namin. In our study, in our scoping study on disaster risk financing, we also saw the situation of financial institutions and even small enterprises. They're actually as vulnerable as their clients. So kung natatamaan din sila ng malaki rin ang impact sa kanila ng disaster, in the situation of pandemic, sila yung isa sa pinakamalaking naapektuhan. Because when people are locked down in their homes, they cannot work. And for many of our fellow country people who are living on a day-to-day basis, if you're not able to earn, then you lost your income, you lost your purchasing power. Hindi ka makabili. At pag walang bumibili, walang exchanges of supplies and goods and monetary value, the economy is dying. No? Nagkakaroon ng impact sa local economy. So when you engage small and medium enterprises in a program such as this, the first thing that you actually support is to stabilize and to strengthen local economy. If a disaster hit and they are up and running because you help them develop a business continuity plan, then it helps you to jumpstart local economy. If you jumpstart local economy, it would support quick recovery of people. Nagkakaroon ng exchanges of goods, services, and monetary. And going digital benefits a lot small enterprises. In the context of pandemic and in the current world where we are converting largely to digital economy, you need to ensure that digital divide in terms of trades and businesses would diminish, and you need to prepare both the consumer and the supplier or the SME to be ready in terms of the digital transition. Lalo na ngayong pandemic, nakita natin yan, no? When your physical shop closed down, you lose your market. But when you go online, sell your market, diba, your products online, you are connected with the online market. So nagsishift lang yung approaches and modality. And in this context, you still help, no, continue the economy by ensuring there would be exchanges of goods and services, provided that extensive financial literacy training, shifting of technologies, and retooling our micro and small enterprises how to use online transaction would be part of the program kasi they need to understand how the system works digitally.
Wow, that's very interesting, Ms. Nina, and I'm sure a lot of our SMEs would appreciate that, and especially many of them now embrace digital transformation. Dati pinag-uusapan lang natin ang madalas natin pinag-uusapan ng digital transformation, but a lot of the SMEs are not really embracing it pa. But because of this pandemic, whoever is into digital will not die, and just recently we were talking about the retail industry as well, and although the retail industry would want to still continue their traditional brick and mortar, but they now go into omni-channel approach in their business operations. Ngayon, what I'd like to ask now, Ms. Nina, is in terms of your rollout, of these projects, di ba, pag sinasabi nating disaster, a lot of people think it's only typhoons, droughts, or other natural calamities. Pero hindi ba isipin, wala bang project din na it's pandemic and we're losing a lot of opportunities? What specific Be Ready project is there, for us who experience maybe lockdowns, because of the COVID-19 crisis? And is there some sort of risk financing programs or projects that's related to the pandemic, Ms. Nina?
So in terms of data, of course we need to, this is very new to the entire world, how we are seeing the data coming in. So I think from a modeling perspective, we need more information on how we can better prepare. So you can integrate that. Ngayon, ang galing na ng AI, di ba? It can already help us to see the trends and the pattern. But with a global situation such as this pandemic, I think it would be interesting to collate our information. So that could be translated into a risk model for all of us. But if you would ask us some current programs that we have in terms of supporting vulnerable communities affected by the pandemic, of course, from our end, we are also providing some intervention with different partners. So one of our approaches would, of course, to ensure that people would have access to risk information. They understand how to prevent, of course, the transfer of COVID through our water sanitation and hygiene program, and comes along a health behavioral program, so that it would really be part of our day-to-day system to ensure na as simple as hand washing, di ba, precautionary measure would be part of our day-to-day living. Pangalawa, for families and communities that are really extremely affected by the lockdown, there are cash transfer program that would support their food security and reviving local businesses. So palaging dalawa yung tinitingnan namin, yung families that are extremely affected and the businesses, because they need to work together to revive, diba, the local economy. Ikatlo, we have also integrated in our programs in supporting the local government the access to health services, particularly reproductive health services. Kasi in the time of pandemic that you cannot go to health centers, no, you are also expecting and probably a correlation to population increase later on. So we are also ensuring that there would be unhampered reproductive services, and that with the local government, with the RHU and DOH, these are continued services, especially in far-flung communities, that transportation are really a hurdle. And lastly, of course, we conduct a lot of capacity building training so that different stakeholders would be able to participate and share risk communication information, so that they would be able also to protect communities, ensure that the practice of the protocol and health behaviors would be transformed. So we are doing this in collaboration with different agencies, both supporting businesses, supporting individual communities, and especially access to reproductive health services.
Wow, Miss Nina, you've quite a lot of programs and projects available. That's really good for communities who are experiencing not only disasters, but also what's the other challenges that are being experienced by our countrymen now. We are running out of time, and thank you so much for this insightful conversation. But before we end the conversation, I always ask this to our guests. What is your learning from the pandemic on a personal level, as well as on how you do your business, and of course that's related to disaster preparedness and sustainability?
One is that we need to understand hazards and risks. If we understand yung characteristic of how we are being affected, whether it be personally, our businesses, our community, our way of living, and even including our mindset, it helps us to go on the second leg, which is to act. And there are different ways how we can do it. But on a personal note, as if it's a reflection also of the things that we need to revisit all our ways of doing things, of reimagining that some of the processes, business, and even from our end programs, we can manage through online platforms, but ensure that there is continuous collaboration and communication. Hindi siya dapat mawala. Pangalawa is how to be more focused and prioritize. Of course, we are all affected by the pandemic, but in Oxfam, because our vision is actually a just world without poverty, we focus on the most vulnerable communities and how to help them get over the tide. And with that, we need other stakeholders. We need the local government, the duty bearers, and work hand in hand, especially with private institutions, businesses, even academic and scientific information, to have a more clear understanding of how we can collectively become more adaptive and later on become more resilient.
Wow, thank you so much for those wealth of insights. That's Ms. Maria Teresa Nina Abogado, Senior Manager for Programs and Partnerships of Oxfam Philippines. Open for Business will be back. Stay with us.
Bakit po ayaw ni Papa di mag-celebrate ng birthday niya?
Hindi mo kailangan yun.
Ang dami pa lang hindi nagawa si Papa para sa birthday niya, no?
Alam mo, pwede pa natin ang gawa ng paraan para matupad lahat ng mga birthday bucket list ni Papa D. Alam ko na.
Ha? It's no! Oh, left rock! Oh! Yeah, man! Oh, yeah!
Sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced. Not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas. A 1-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia.
Sa mga taga-Iloilo at Antique.
Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to explain our health outdoor track.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Open for Business is back, and our term of the week is from the United Nations Strategy for International Risk Reduction. Our term is disaster risk reduction. It is the concept and practice of reducing disaster risks through systematic efforts to analyze and reduce the causal factors of disasters, reducing exposure to hazards, lessening vulnerability of people and property, wise management of land and the environment, and improving preparedness for adverse events are all examples of disaster risk reduction. And our word of the week is from Stephen King. He said, "There's no harm in hoping for the best as long as you're prepared for the worst." Thank you for watching Open for Business. Join us again in the next episodes of Open for Business for more insights from CEOs, thought leaders, industry experts, and SMEs promoting business development in the Philippines. See you again every Saturday and Sunday here in Open for Business, where we discuss business information, deliver the latest business news to keep you informed and open for business, and be ahead of the curve from vision to action. You're on Facebook Live on Eagle News and at Net25 TV, and you can watch this again in the video section of the Eagle News and Net25 Facebook pages and on eaglenewslive.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Net25 TV. Thank you again for watching. For Open for Business, this is Cesar Vallejos. We live in interesting times.